Hi, I'm Amanda McKay. I'm a professional artist and I'm making these videos with tips to help people enhance their creativity regardless of whether they're a professional artist or maybe just starting out with a new hobby. These tips are meant to be useful for anybody at any level. For this tip today, certainly you've heard before about how practice makes perfect or practice makes progress, and certainly you would apply this to whatever form of art you're working in. I think basically any form of art has a technical component. If you're a painter, to get good at it, you're going to have to practice painting. If you're a baker, you're going to have to bake a few cakes to get any good at it, probably. So of course you've heard that, but to just work on technical expertise through practice. But what I think people forget about or don't realize is that you also need to practice the act of coming up with new ideas and creative ideas. So instead of getting good at painting, the question would be like, what am I going to paint? And that's actually a different skill in itself, but it still requires practice. And I think people just skip over that. I think that a lot of people believe that you're either just born being able to come up with ideas off the top of your head or you aren't. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to overcome with this YouTube channel, is that no, this is really something that can be learned and practiced. So you have to think about practicing inspiration and taking the time to come up with ideas and understanding that like the first few times or the first 20 times even that you sit down and you try to think of like, okay, what recipe what am I going to do that's a different recipe this time, if I'm a baker. And this, it might take multiple sessions before you really feel like you're coming up with any good ideas. And that's perfectly normal because, like I said, just like anything else, the act of inspiration or just being creative is going to take a lot of practice. So definitely don't be discouraged and don't think that because, okay, maybe you've tried this before and you sat down and like, well, let me think of what I'm going to do next, and you didn't come up with anything that you thought was good. Just do that more. And you'll eventually come up with stuff that you think is good, and you'll become more and more consistent at it. And that is, anybody that you know that you would consider to be a really creative person, I promise they have done this, probably even throughout their whole lives. And then you do start to see yourself as being a more creative person, and then it gets even easier because you don't have that mental block. Now, one thing that I've always encouraged, and really I can't encourage enough, is to have some way to keep track of these ideas that you come up with. I use an ideas notebook that's just like a little notebook that I carry around with me. Maybe you just have like maybe you just record it, do an audio recording of your ideas, whatever works for you. But not only does this keep you from losing good ideas or having like a jump off point for some other idea based on what you already came up with, it signals to your brain that this is important. If you're taking the time to like write these down, it lets your brain know that maybe this is something that it ought to try to do more of, because it's obviously important to you if you're taking the time to record it and so that you can remember it. So remember, practice does make progress, but that's also for how creative you are, what kind of creative ideas you're capable of coming up with. So definitely keep practicing it as you can. I definitely have a lot of other videos on this topic of how to practice this. But just remember that inspiration is something that usually you have to cultivate and practice with, just like anything else. Well, I hope you found this tip to be useful. Again, my name is Amanda McKay, and thank you so much for watching.